There is a place that is spoken about only in whispers, a dark area that spawns the beginnings of urban legends, a place where anything can happen and usually does. During the light of day, it hides just outside of view, but when the sun goes down, spirits, creatures of the night, roam free, and things do go bump in the night. It is in every state and every country, and there is no escaping it, no matter how safe you feel behind your locked doors and latched windows. So we invite you to turn down the lights and turn up your radio while we join Dave Schrader and Tim Dennis, your hosts, on a journey into the darkness on the edge of town.
Hello and welcome. It's Saturday. You've made it through another week, and you're about to get the gift you deserve. That's right. It's Beyond the Darkness. I'm your host, Dave Schrader, along with me, Mr. Tim Dennis. This is the best in paranormal talk radio. We are live on tape from Tombstone, Arizona. Kinda. I mean, we're in Tombstone, Arizona. This recording is live, but it's on tape, and we recorded it when we were still in Minnesota. Is this confusing? I feel like I need a flow chart at this point, Tim.
Yeah, we probably should have some sort of thing connecting the dots for everybody so that they know what's going on, because I'm confused now, too.
But tomorrow, Sunday's show is live on tape from Tombstone, Arizona, because we're actually in Tombstone right now, Saturday, and we're recording tomorrow's episode for Sunday. While we're in Tombstone, we've got, I don't want to brag, Tim, but we've got some celebrity guests stopping by.
Yeah.
We're going to find out some haunted histories. We're going to talk movies. We're going to have a great time. Tomorrow's just kind of a different show, and I hope you guys will tune in for it. We are not going to have Theater of the Mind tomorrow. Fair warning, because we've got so many different things we're juggling to get handled and make sure it's part of the show. But Theater of the Mind will be back again next week. We've got kind of a special show for tomorrow.
Yeah, it's going to be great, actually.
Yeah. So I think we're just going to stick with that and do what we have to do. All right. Today it is Supernatural News and Parashare Saturday. And I know that I said we were going to give you guys a phone number that you could start calling, and I completely and utterly lied to you. We will have that available starting next week. If I get it, I'm going to get everything handled. We've been so busy with trying to get everything done for Midnight in the Desert and Beyond the Darkness and True Crime Tuesday this week that I just didn't have time to get everything set up I needed to. But I'll start posting on our social media as soon as that phone number is available. And you can call and leave us stories, your thoughts on the show, paranormal encounters. And if you just want to call in and talk dirty to Tim, that's the way to do it.
Hey, I'll take that.
Yeah, unless you want to call his cell phone, which is 612.
Dave,
what? Well, I just figured you might not want to wait to get talked dirty to.
You know,
so
people can.
It's 612. What?
People can kind of meander and ramble on. I just like them to get straight to the dirty talk. So just leave it on that little line that you're going to set up and just get straight to it. Yeah.
Okay, but if you want to text him over some nudie pictures, gentlemen, beforehand, his phone number 612.
Dave,
what?
Just send it to the email. It's easier.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Yeah. I guess so. Boy, you're a killjoy.
No, it's just easier. Yeah.
Dear Dave, that joke is so tired and old. I wish you would grow up and start acting like an adult. Sincerely, your biggest fan from Detroit, Michigan, Marjorie C. Clark.
Really? It's Marjorie C. Clark that's getting after you?
Yeah. I just thought I'd throw that in there. All right, let's get going. We've got a lot of news to cover this week, a lot of stories to share. Where will we begin, Mr. Dennis?
Well, Dave, we're going all the way back to 1972. We're time traveling in the first...
nice.
Yeah, in the first story.
Hold on. Let me go get my butterfly collars and my bell-bottom jeans on.
They never go out of style, Dave.
They do, Tim, actually.
Do they?
They do.
Really? I should really put them away then.
Yeah.
That's what I'm wearing here in Tombstone, actually, this week is...
And it's polyester. You're sweating.
Like a
whore in church. Like a whore. Oh, wait. Hold on. Dear Mr. Schrader, as a whore who does go to church, I thought you should know I don't sweat. Sincerely, Marjorie C. Clark.
I am a lady. I am a lady. I do not sweat.
Right.
I glow.
Glow. Yeah. Shimmer.
It turns out that the search for D.B. Cooper, Dave, may be over.
What?
May be done. Yeah.
What?
Investigators say they've confirmed the skyjacker's identity by decoding long-lost confessions. It may be done, Dave. A team of cold case investigators claim they've decoded a 1972 message by D.B. Cooper, and that it contains a confession from Vietnam veteran Robert Rackstraw. No, I'm not doing a stereotypical voice here, kids. That's his name, Robert Rackstraw. Long suspected of being the infamous skyjacker. The letter was addressed to the Portland Oregonian newspaper. Months earlier, a man identified as a fictitious Cooper had hijacked a Seattle-bound flight and later parachuted out of a plane with $200,000, never to be heard from again. Now, you may say to yourself, $200,000, is that really enough to make you want to jump out of a plane? Keep in mind it was 1972.
That would mean it was worth almost like $260,000.
Right. Inflation really wasn't that much. This letter is to let to, he didn't spell it correctly. It was T-O-O. Always get your spelling correctly.
Yeah, they can't see that over the radio.
I know,
Tim.
but
you can just buzz right through that.
I just like the fact that I'm a little bit of a spelling Nazi, Dave. I did win a few spelling bees in my day.
Hey, Tim.
Yeah.
Newsflash. Hold on. Dear Mr. Dennis,
yeah.
I don't need you critiquing my very cool letter from 1972.
Okay, yeah.
I am a $200,000 heir, and I have eluded the law for years. So blow me, buddy, your friend, not D.B. Cooper.
I'll probably get that email, too.
Oh, yeah. I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope so.
This letter is to, nice spelling, DB, let you know that I am not dead, but really alive and just back from the Bahamas, so your silly troopers there can stop looking for me. That is just how dumb this government is. I like your articles about me, but you can stop them now. D.B. Cooper is not real, it reads. I want out of the system and saw a way through good old UNK, U-N-K, he writes.
Yeah.
Now it is Uncle's turn to weep and pay one of its own some cash for a change. And please tell the lackey cops D.B. Cooper is not my real name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's not.
No.
No. Television and film producer Tom Colbert, or Colbert, I like the Colbert from Stephen Colbert, who's led a team of about 40 private investigators in the search for Cooper, says he's received the letter after successfully suing the FBI for the Cooper files. No one even knew about this letter, Colbert told the Daily News. When I got it, I noticed it was typed just like a different Cooper letter, so I saw a code breaker and showed it to him. He said, Tom, you're not going to believe it, but his confession is in here, Colbert said.
Because he's a code breaker, letter raker. Isn't that an old song from the 70s as well?
Love maker, don't you mess around with me. Yeah,
cool.
Yeah. Rick Sherwood, a former member of the Army Security Agency, which deciphers signals, said he spotted 4 phrases or words that were repeated throughout the note, including D.B. Cooper is not real, Uncle or Unc, referring to Uncle Sam, the system, and lackey cops. D.B. Cooper and lackey cops appeared in the same sentence, as did Unc, and the system, suggesting to Sherwood that the coded messages could be contained in those sentences.
Doesn't that sound... tell me that whole sentence again. D.B. Cooper and the lackey cops?
Yes.
Doesn't that sound like an awesome West Side rap group? D.B. Cooper and the lackey cops?
That sounds like a really lame alternative band name. Like D.B. Cooper and the lackey cops.
I thought it sounded very rappy to me, but I'm not really plugged into that atmosphere.
That would be a terrible rap name.
Wow.
Yeah.
Don't hold back. Let me know how you really feel.
I'm just saying it.
Dear Tim, your judging of me drives me insane. Just because you don't agree doesn't mean to tell me it's the most terrible thing you've ever heard. Your co-host and producer, Dave Schrader.
You would actually just send me the email rather than talk to me about it? I mean, right here. I mean, you could just kind of hash it out. I mean, I'm sure they'd like to hear it.
Dear Mr. Dennis, again, thank you for judging me on the air and making me feel stupid. You can kiss my hairy white crevasse. Your pal, Dave.
I mean, doesn't D.B. Cooper and Lackey Cops kind of sound like Huey Lewis in the News? I mean, it's not really. I mean, it's kind of lackluster R&B, faux pop.
It does sound like Huey Lewis in the News. That is a great point.
Yeah,
D.B. Cooper and the Lackluster Cops with their new hit song.
Yeah,
I Want a New Drug.
Yeah. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not very It's not very rap. It's more really bad R&B pop.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, fine. I stand corrected.
Yeah.
Dear Mr. Dennis, thank you for showing me the error of my ways.
Touché.
I can now see I am a moron. Your faithful friend and compatriot, Dave W. Schrader.
All right, where was I in this story? Ah, yes. And please tell the lackey cops was decoded to mean I am first LT, I am first lieutenant. Evidently, you can't spell lieutenant. I am first lieutenant Robert Rackstraw, according to Colbert. Sherwood had deciphered earlier letters from Cooper and had become familiar with his writing style. I read 2 or 3 times and said, "This is Rackstraw. This is what he does," Sherwood told the Daily News. I noticed he kept on repeating words in his sentences and thought he had a code in there somewhere. He was taunting like he normally does, and I thought his name was going to be in it, and sure enough, the numbers added up perfectly, he said. He said the entire decoding process took him a couple of weeks. I was definitely shocked his name was in there. That's what I was looking for, and everything added up to that, he said. An earlier letter addressed to 4 different newspapers contained hidden identifiers, including his military units that pointed to Rackstraw, now 74, and living in the San Diego area. Rackstraw, who could not be reached for comment, was previously investigated and cleared by authorities for being Cooper, but he remains the most likely suspect in the elusive case. Let's just say we closed the case, and this is the icing on the cake I didn't expect. It truly is. We not only had his initials and units in the other letters, but now we have him saying, "I am Cooper." Rackstraw is a narcissistic...
Cuckoo Kajoob.
Exactly. Rackstraw is a narcissistic sociopath who never thought he would be caught, Colbert went on to say. He was trying to prove that he was smarter than anyone else, but he couldn't fight 1,500 years of brain power on our team. Wow, that's a really old team if you think about it. We beat him. I didn't expect it, but it's the icing, he went on to say. There you go.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. DB,
very cool.
I'm waiting for that debut album, though, DB Cooper and the Lackey Cops. I'm sure it'll be an awesome one.
Yeah.
Do you think they'll, instead of sports, do you think they'll have something like, I don't know, a financial page? As
Ransom?
Yeah, Ransom. Yeah.
Ransom.
They're big.
Or Skyjack.
Skyjack. Ooh, that's a good
one.
Yeah. That'd be a good album title for him.
Dude, let's just be D.B. Cooper and the Lackluster Cops, and let's just do all ABBA covers, but in ska and reggae.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Waterloo, man.
You come to Waterloo.
Man.
We are horrible at that.
Yeah.
Dear Dave Schrader and Tim Donner, don't be doing our accent. You suck at it.
You're
trying to
hijack me culture boy.
Me culture boy.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Speaking of, you and I love music.
Mm-hmm.
We love seeing bands, especially bands from the 80s and 90s, right? And revisiting that part of our youth.
Mm-hmm.
There's a weird concert coming to Minnesota, and it's at a small venue.
Oh, what's that?
I just don't see the pairing of this, but to me it's funny. It is Sting.
Oh,
right?
Yes. Yeah.
From the Police?
Yeah.
And Shaggy.
Right. Yeah. They released an album together.
Bombastic.
Have you heard the album?
I have not. Is it good?
Sure.
Every breath me be taken. Every step me be taken.
They do have because the initial... You have to understand the initial...
I know Police have that kind of reggae, ska vibe to it, but...
Right.
What is ska? What does ska mean?
Ska...
It sounds like something an old man would say when he's mad. Ska.
Well, ska is kind of a reggae influence type... I don't want to... It's not punk, but
Shaggy.
But Shaggy is let's put it this way. Sting kind of took his reggae-influenced... alternative music and took it one step further and just kind of went more towards the reggae side and teamed up with Shaggy and did an album. And it's a little bit more on the R&B influenced side, and it's there. Yeah. You'll have to hear it for yourself.
Unless, what if we're getting it wrong? What if it isn't that Shaggy? What if it's Sting and literally Shaggy from Mystery Inc., Tim?
Oh, I would take that.
Yeah.
I would take that in a minute. Yeah.
Like a message in a bottle, buddy.
You know,
like I'm sending out an SOS. I'm sending out an SOS.
It would be perfect if Shaggy did the singing and Sting just played bass.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Through the entire thing? That's just the way the whole show rolls?
Yeah, exactly. That's how it should be. Yeah. That would be a perfect album.
That would be an awesome
and a perfect
album.
tour, too. Wouldn't that piss people off? That would be perfect. Like if they showed up and they paid $300 a ticket and you're sitting front row and you're waiting for Sting to come out and you just want to hear him sing Roxanne and you hear this voice.
Like Roxanne, you don't have to turn on the red light.
That would be awesome. People would revolt.
Days are over. You don't have to sell your body to the night.
People would revolt. They'd be throwing stuff. I mean,
I know I would be.
Cars would get overturned. It would look like the Detroit Pistons won the world championship again. It'd be awesome. I'm just saying.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Well, he's collaborative.
Yeah.
I don't know if I should go see Sting and Shaggy. I just don't know if I've got it in me.
You'd have to hear the album first to determine whether you want to, because you're sure enough going to hear reggae-tinged police songs. It's going to happen.
Which already kind of exist, right?
They do.
They called the police songs?
But it's going to very much be reggae-tinged. It's not going to. You're not going to hear. Don't expect to show up and hear traditional police stuff. It's not going to happen.
All right. Way to bring the party down, Tim. Where are we off to next?
A mysterious sonar anomaly off of North Carolina could be a shipwreck, a rock formation, or something else. A strange sonar...
Just like we're sending out an SOS.
Exactly.
It's a message in a bottle.
If it were that Shaggy, I would go. I would pay $300 to watch that.
Who wouldn't? Yeah, that would be kind of cool to see.
I would.
Yeah.
A strange sonar anomaly had NOAA explorers, or NOAA explorers, diving off the coast of North Carolina on Wednesday, hoping for an explanation. NOAA had not been afraid to notch up suspense about the area, noting it could be an archaeology site, a geological formation, or otherwise. It's anybody's guess what otherwise means, but UFO enthusiasts might be tingling with ideas. Or they just might be tingling because they haven't left their mother's basement. Just saying. The site is being called the Big Dipper Anomaly by the crew aboard NOAA's Okeanos Explorer. I don't know how they pronounce that, Dave. I'm not even going to pretend. Which launched a remotely operated vehicle in the area at 8:30 a.m. Wednesday. Experts believe the anomaly might be a shipwreck, but we're leaning towards a geological formation with biological communities and other debris later in the day, according to a TV station, which is WTKR in Virginia. An official accounting of their findings has not been released yet. The location of the anomaly is being kept confidential. North Carolina's coast is known as the graveyard of the Atlantic due to the large number of ships that have sunk in the region. The vessels range from pirate ships to Civil War blockade runners to German U-boats sunk during World War II. The Okeanos, we'll call it that, explorer expedition set out in late May to gather data on unknown and poorly understood deep water areas of the southeastern United States. Sounds intriguing. Teams will work together to map the seafloor and observe many of those sites for the first time, NOAA says on its Okeanos Explorer website. You can correct me by emailing me. The areas being explored are between 820 and 13,124 feet down and include plateaus, ridges, and submarine canyons offshore of North Carolina. And that's the name of that tune.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I like that the UFO people jumped in right away. And
oh, yes. Yeah. Well, they're there in their mother's basement. They have nothing better to do.
All right, Mr. Dennis, where shall we go next, sir?
We go to Las Vegas, Nevada, Dave.
Oh, Las Vegas. I like Las Vegas.
Oh, Las Vegas.
What's going on there?
Where a time warp has been discovered by a paranormal investigator outside of Las Vegas. It turns out a paranormal researcher said he's the first person to ever discover a time warp. It's true. And that he found it on the outskirts of Las Vegas, Joshua Warren, our good friend Joshua Warren, has been measuring the rate of time all over southern Nevada. And he said last week that he's found that time has slowed down. It's called the casino, Dave. And when you walk in, it's smoke-filled, and there's drinks, and you just put yourself in front of a slot machine, and before you know it...
See, what happens to me is time does not slow down. I seem like I just sat down, and all of a sudden I'm down $500 and 6 hours of my life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, look, it speeds up for you. He said he has measured multiple places between Las Vegas and Area 51, but the only place he got a reading was in the desert just north of the city between I-15 and Route 93. The weird thing, the real holy grail here, was what he picked up with this brand new piece of technology, this according to Warren. The technology he's referring to is the DT meter, which stands for Differential Time Rate Meter. It was recently invented by Silicon Valley engineer Ron Heath. It's connected to a 100-foot cable with a sensor on the end that sends back a signal. That signal is always supported to travel at the same rate of time at any particular place. The only way that could change is if a black hole approached Earth or something like that, which is never supposed to happen, Warren said. God, I hope not. At this spot on June 18th of 2018, I actually measured for the first and only time itself slowing down for 20 microseconds. Oh, gosh. Warren said that should not happen according to the laws of physics. That shouldn't happen unless there's some kind of unknown technology being tested nearby that would influence the environment, or if there are naturally places around planet Earth that actually sort of flicker once in a while, that warp a little bit. That according to Joshua. He said where this happened brings up even more questions. I think it's really interesting when you consider that this site where we got this reading showing this time anomaly also happens to be one of the most popular UFO hotspots in the area, this according to Joshua. He said that his research is just beginning. The big question at this point is not whether or not we have these anomalies, but what's causing them. Is this something natural that gives us a window or a gateway into another world or another level of reality? Or is this a byproduct of some kind of weird technology, be it something secret and man-made or something that's extraterrestrial? He said he plans to continue measuring time rate around Las Vegas to see if any pattern can be deciphered. Yeah.
All right, we'll have to hear from Joshua P. Warren. But I'm curious, how does it read time? How does it know that time in this moment is slower here than anywhere else?
I don't know. It's a good question.
That's weird. All right, where are we off to next?
Next, we talk about a couple convinced that their East Side business is haunted. Surveillance cameras have captured some odd apparitions, evidently. We go to San Antonio, where Joe and April Ward opened their on-live Hall of Fame cafe on the city's east side late last year, and they chose a theme that salutes music from the past. Little did they know, a piece of that past would come back to haunt them. The couple is convinced that their business, which is located in the 2400 block of East Houston Street, is home to about half a dozen ghosts, and they say they have the video to prove it. Before seeing the eerie images captured by their surveillance cameras, Joe Ward said he had the feeling that something was going on. He said back when he was renovating the space, he often got the feeling that he wasn't alone. He says, I didn't tell April about it because I thought I was losing my mind, he said. A tape measure kept coming up missing, and I saw, or rather, a saw blade and my keys. So all three of those were coming up missing. He said he also began to feel something or someone tugging at his glasses on his shirt collar, which is where he was keeping them at the time when no one else was around. Ward said he tried to brush it all off, but when decorations began to move around on their own after closing, the couple decided to turn on their surveillance video. They said the camera captured what appears to be a child-sized ghost using their business as a playground. In the video, it appears that that form a makeshift red velvet rope inside the restaurant go flying through the air on their own. It looks like a kid standing there, and you see an adult's arms somewhere in there as well, April Ward said, pointing out that she believes there are apparitions in the video. For confirmation, the couple turned to the experts and contacted the local Afterlife Paranormal Society. I texted the video to her, and she called me back and said, yes, it's a ghost, April Ward said. Veronica Batista with Afterlife Paranormal Society said she later visited the restaurant and recorded her visit with her equipment. She said the wards actually have half a dozen spirits in their space, all friendly and not a danger to the couple. The ghosts identified themselves as Peter, Amber, Jesse, Stephen, Don, and Tammy, this according to Batista. The wards said while the spirits may be at home there, they feel anything but comfortable. April Ward said she now sleeps with the lights on, and Joe said he has an escape plan in case things get crazy. That's actually not a bad idea. I'm not messing around with them, he said, half joking. She's my wife, so I have to be there with her. She said, for better or worse, till death do us part. I told her, that's death, and I'm going to part out that door. Guy's got a good attitude. Other people, though, have been making a bid to get inside their doors. The couple said they have heard from several ghost enthusiasts who want to pay a visit to their business. They plan to host their first overnight guests inside the restaurant this weekend.
That's death, and I'm out the door.
That's right.
That's awesome.
That's death, and that's the drawing line in our relationship, dear.
Good Lord. All right, where are we off to next, Tim?
Well, we're about to introduce a new term into your lexicon. It's called parasomnia, and it's the truth about night terrors. Less paranormal and more parasomnia, Dave. Have you ever been drifting off to sleep and snapped out of sleep, or the feeling of a malevolent presence, a sense that something or someone is watching you from the shadowy corners of your bedroom? Maybe you've been or ever
just seen... last night when I woke up and you were standing in my room here in Tombstone.
Well, you know, sometimes
that's not really paranormal. That's just terrifying in a whole different way.
Sometimes I just need to make sure you're okay, Dave. That's all it is. You know, it's not creepy. It's just being, secure. Maybe you have even seen a dark form towering over you. That wasn't me though, Dave. That was the shadows. We are staying in a haunted place. Even more terrifying, you may have even felt a painful weight on your chest, making it hard to breathe. These experiences are common, terrifying, or often attributed to some kind of otherworldly encounter, and your descriptions of these events may have even been met with disbelief. But the author of this article believes you. I don't know if I do, but they do. No, I'm kidding. Those experiences are real and they are terrifying, but if you think they are communing with spirits or aliens, you're definitely wrong, according to this person who writes this article. Not me. I believe you. Unusual and unpleasant sensory experiences when waking or nodding off are a form of parasomnia, according to the article. Parasomnias are sleep disorders characterized by abnormal events that occur when falling asleep, during sleep, or even when waking from sleep. The kind of hallucinations described above come in two forms: hypnopompic or hypnagogic. Hypnopompic hallucinations occur when you are waking from sleep. Hypnopompic comes from the Greek hypnos for sleep and pompe for sending away. Hypnagogic hallucinations occur from falling asleep. Hypnagogic comes from the Greek hypnos for sleep and agognos for leading. Both kinds of hallucinations tend to be visual, but can involve sound, touch, taste, smell, or a sense of motion. They are nearly always inspire terror, and that they can be difficult to distinguish from reality. Indeed, a recent paper from the Journal of Neurological Sciences provides evidence that the monster in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein was born from a hypnagogic hallucination. Sometimes hallucinations are experienced concurrently with a temporary paralysis, the sense of being able or unable rather to move when waking or falling asleep from sleep paralysis rather. During REM or rapid eye movement, sleep, your body is essentially paralyzed. REM is a stage of sleep most often associated with recalled dreams, and muscle paralysis during this time is thought to protect us from physically acting out our dreams. Sometimes, though, when you are awoken from REM sleep, the body remains paralyzed as though you are still asleep. The experience is said to be akin to a waking death. In a 1999 interview with the New York Times, parasomnia researcher Professor Alan Cheyenne discussed the findings of a large-scale survey investigating experiences of sleep paralysis. Hundreds of respondents likened the experience of sleep paralysis to alien abduction. Professor Cheyenne summarized their various reports by saying a sensed presence, vague gibberish spoken in one's ear, shadowy creatures moving about the room, strange immobility, a crushing pressure, and painful sensations in various parts of the body. These are compatible not just with an assault, by a primitive demon, but also with probing by alien experimenters. The sensations of floating and flying account for the reports of levitation and transport to alien vessels. While approximately one-third of the individuals may experience sleep hallucinations or sleep paralysis, they tend to be more common in those who use drugs and alcohol, have mental health issues, or are experiencing anxiety or stress. For example, the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine recently described the case of a 17-year-old girl who, when experiencing distress over her parents' divorce, started hearing voices when trying to fall asleep. The voices were usually casual, but when she was particularly anxious, they became more aggressive. In some instances, sleep-related hallucinations and sleep paralysis can indicate narcolepsy, a more serious underlying parasomnia. Narcolepsy is a neurological disorder characterized by excessive daytime sleepiness and sometimes also cataplexy, sudden episodes of muscle weakness triggered by strong emotions. Narcolepsy affects approximately 0.05% of the population. These relatively mundane explanations for what many individuals may have interpreted as extraordinary otherworldly encounters may come as a relief or as a disappointment. Put simply, both sleep hallucinations and sleep paralysis may be thought of as aspects of sleep that have leaked into the waking world. They demonstrate the tremendous power of the human mind and give some insight into the secret and spooky world of sleep. What they do not do is turn your sleep-wake transitions into a situational Ouija board. Ghosts aren't real, I think, is what Dr. Jessica L. Patterson, the author of this article, went on to say. She's a senior research fellow at the Appleton Institute.
Interesting.
Yeah, there you go.
Interesting. She doesn't believe in ghosts, but
she does.
And I get there's a lot of what she's discussing and stuff we've talked about on the show, and a way I feel. That's why I said my perspective and ideas on ghosts has changed a lot over the years, and it's because of science and that. But does it always mean because we can replicate it through science that it is not true? That, you know, we can replicate the taste of a Twinkie with chemicals.
Yeah.
We can replicate the smell of Play-Doh with chemicals. It doesn't mean that Play-Doh doesn't exist and Twinkies don't exist just because we can replicate them, right?
Right.
It just means that it is something that can be done in other ways. So, I don't know. Again, maybe I'm being too open about it, but interesting nonetheless. All right, where are we going next?
Well, Dave, your favorite hotel and mine, the Pfister, is back.
Pardon me?
The Pfister, Dave, the Pfister. You,
okay.
Pfister, you brought her.
Oh, no. This is a family show.
Well, I know, but...
Dear Uncle Tim, please keep the show clean. Your favorite niece, Babette.
Oh, Babette. Oh. We're going to talk about the St. Louis Cardinals now. Evidently, they're having a tough time with the Pfister. I'm just saying.
That does sound like an evil villain from like Ronald McDonald's old days, doesn't it?
It does.
You've got Mayor McCheese, you've got the Grimace, you've got the Fry Guys, you've got the Hamburglar and the Pfister.
That's right.
Robble. Now we know why
He robbled.
Why he robbled so much.
That's right.
That's all he could say. Robble.
Turns out that Carlos Martinez and Marcel Ozuna, I believe that's how he says his name, claim to have encountered the supernatural while at their Milwaukee hotel. If you're a horror fanatic, I got to be careful because we are at the Pfister. You might not even need films to get your fix. Perhaps a visit to Milwaukee would give you a much more real experience. You got to remember now, folks, if you remember your Darkness Radio history, during Cinco de Nino, the Pfister Hotel did come up.
Yes, it did.
It did. There is a hotel in Milwaukee called the Pfister Hotel, which is rumored to be a ghost haven. Among other things, the hotel is a popular lodging place for baseball teams that are in town to play the Brewers. Perhaps because people just can't pass up the opportunity to see something freaky at the Pfister. There is a decent-sized list of ball players who have supposedly experienced the hauntings of the Pfister Hotel, which includes guys such as Adrian Beltre, Pablo Sandoval, Bryce Harper, Brandon Phillips, and John Gray, who apparently does ghost hunting as a hobby when he's not playing baseball. Of course, they don't play much baseball there in Milwaukee, just saying. Recently, a couple of St. Louis Cardinals apparently experienced the spookiness of the Pfister Hotel while they were in Milwaukee for a weekend series against the Brewers. Pitcher Carlos Martinez and outfielder Marcell Ozuna each claimed to have seen a ghost in their rooms. After getting spooked, Martinez and Ozuna decided to move into backup catcher Francisco Peña's room for safety, along with Tommy Pham and a few coaches. I guess it makes sense. If you're being attacked by ghosts, it's better to be along with a group of people rather than being alone. At least it's less scary that way. Martinez even posted a video on Instagram in Spanish about the incident, which is good, I guess. We are here in Milwaukee, Martinez says in the video. I just saw a ghost in Ozuna's room. He saw another one. We're all here. We are all in Pinita's room. We're all stuck here. We are going to sleep together. Oh, that's nice. That's teamwork right there. Yeah. If the ghost shows again, we're going to fight together. What are they going to fight with?
Baseball bats,
I guess.
Louisville Sluggers proved to be very effective towards the undead.
I guess so. Sounds pretty creepy. It's hard to tell if Martinez and Ozuna actually saw anything or if they were just playing along with the reputation of the Pfister Hotel. But if you're interested in finding out the truth, maybe you should take a trip to Milwaukee and book a room at the Pfister for a night or two. It could be life-changing.
It could be. Yeah. I doubt it, but it could be.
Yeah.
All right, where are we off to next, sir?
We continue on, where this MLA slept at a crematorium to drive away construction workers' fear of ghosts. So you can either play along or you can just get in there and prove them wrong, one or the other. That sounds like a neat slogan, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sounds like the slogan of a band called D.B. Cooper and the Lackluster Cops. Our first hit song, Can't We All Just Get Along?
Can't we all just get along? It took Namala Rama Naidu. Wow.
What?
Namala Rama Naidu. You say that 10 times.
I can't even say it one time.
Now being called the ghost-busting MLA 3 consecutive nights to convince that there are no ghosts around and outside the building. How many times do we see elected politicians go out of the way for the welfare of the common man? Well, Namala Rama Naidu, the first-time elected MLA from the Telugu Desam Party in Andhra Pradesh, has become an overnight hero from his unique approach to persuade villagers to renovate a crematorium, which was in shambles as its workers and villagers believed that any alteration with the building could anger ghosts inside of it. It took Namala Rama Naidu, now being called the ghost-busting MLA, 3 consecutive nights to convince that there are no ghosts around, in, and outside the building. He slept on a folding cot under the open sky in a mosquito-infested crematorium. That's the worst part of this whole deal. It was mosquito-infested.
Oh, count me out. Mosquitoes.
Yeah, they're the worst. In his Palakole town of West Godavari, Naidu's attempt to modernize the crematorium with facilities like washrooms and a park had hit a roadblock. That was the worst part of this, is reading roadblock, was because laborers were afraid of paranormal activity. However, his ghost-busting endeavor, which included dining at the crematorium, prodded several laborers to return to the facility the next day. After his first night out at the crematorium, the MLA was greeted by around 50 workers, but he insisted that he would spend some more nights to break the superstitions of every villager. Reports suggest after his second night on Sunday, over 70 villagers came to meet him and supported his initiative. After his third night, the MLA was greeted by several village women who assured that they no more fear ghosts and that he would carry out the construction work at the building. The MLA's efforts earned him praise from Pinarayi Vijayan, the chief minister of neighboring state of Kerala. Mighty impressed, Vijayan called him a crusader against superstition. TDP MLA Namala Rama Naidu. I stumbled.
Hey, Macarena.
All right. Nirmala Ramanaidu, there you go, deserves praise for spending a night at the crematorium where workers had refused to enter after dark to do modernization work out of fear of spirits. Ramanaidu is a crusader against superstition. He has decided to spend more nights at this crematorium in Palakoli of West Godavari district to instill confidence among workers who are afraid of ghosts. Yeah.
Good on him. Stop being a jerk and get out here and do your work. Here, look, I'm spending the night. Although I love his bed. It's like Hello Kitty sheets or strawberry shortcake or something. Can you see the picture or no?
It's very flowery. Yeah, there's a lot of flowers on it. It was very pretty. It's very pink and it's very flowery.
Good on him.
Stressing that Vijayan's fight is against superstition, Vijayan added that Ramanaidu's efforts are therefore not a local affair. It should attract national attention because he is a fight against frivolous rituals and rampant superstition. So there you go.
Good on him. I like that. Throwing himself into the room. Let me show you. It's safe. I'm going to spend 3 nights here. Now, can we get back to work?
There you go. Yeah.
Hey, all right, Tim. Few stories left. Where are we off to next?
Going to Gloucestershire, Dave, where ghost hunters meant to be giving a lecture at a Gloucestershire venue end up investigating paranormal activity because mediums were freaking out. That's how it starts, isn't it? The mediums freak out, and then people get freaked out, and all of a sudden it's chaos and orgies, and it's
like that line from Jurassic Park 2 with Jeff Goldblum. Oh yeah, it always starts with the oohs and ahs, and then there's running and screaming and lots of blood. That's exactly how this all breaks down.
That's exactly how it breaks down. Gloucestershire Paranormal Investigation Service thought that they would just be giving a simple talk at the Stroud subscription rooms, but they had not begun their lecture, not even begun it yet, when they were asked to suit up and investigate. Really? They started suiting up? You have to suit up to do an investigation? We're doing it all wrong,
Haven't
Dave.
you watched Ghostbusters? Come on, man.
We're doing it all wrong. And to investigate what was going on in the room after a group of mediums at the event sensed something was up with their electromagnetic field devices, temperature gauges, and electronic voice phenomenon recorders. They set to work to see what was causing the strange atmosphere in the historic building. GPIS lead Paul Cowmeadow, the best last name of this entire show, said it really was not meant to be an investigation. We were there on the day to give our talk from 10:30 a.m., but we noticed that the mediums at the event were freaking out a bit. They seemed to be clutching their protective crystals for dear life. I don't know why that makes me laugh, but it does. The mediums also just could not seem to work, as they said something seemed to be blocking them from working. As soon as we got there, we could just feel that something was up. The energy at that time of day was just heavy and almost electric. On the walkabout, they picked up on quite a lot of activity around the back stairs of the building and the main stairs that lead to the ballroom. GPIS member Ed Francis said that day it seemed that everyone's electrical equipment was not working. Most people that were there found the beginning of the day was very stressful. Nothing seemed to be going right. It was quite exciting to be going around the building and finding so much activity in the middle of the day. The spikes on the EMF detector and the temperature readings were all going off at the same time. The steps to the ballroom had a residual energy, and there were 2 steps that the EMF spiked each time. We later found that we had managed to record a Class A intelligent voice phenomenon. The voice is so clear, it was good to do because it seemed that the atmosphere lifted all of a sudden, and people were able to get back to work at the event. They had discovered what we believed was to be the spirit of a young lady and a child on the stairs. The team then spoke to one of the mediums who had felt the same presence as what had been recorded on the voice hardware. Paul said over various levels and heights on the other set of the stairs, there were spikes at a point on the stairs, but it was consistently at the level of a height of a child. We looked around to check any other areas that could have set off the EMF detector, but not even the lift or lights sparked the machine to go off. It was a crazy experience, but we were so pleased with the electronic voice phenomenon response. You can't get much better than that.
All right. And how many more stories do we have?
Looks like we have just a couple left here, 2 left.
Oh, goes too quickly. Where are we off to next?
A mother who suffered a miscarriage is now convinced that she's being haunted by the baby's ghost. A Toronto woman believes that she's being haunted by the ghost of the baby that she miscarried. Melissa Smith, a mother of two, is convinced that she's captured footage of a ghostly face on her crib cam following a number of creepy occurrences, according to Caters. Smith insists that she was always a paranormal skeptic, but that changed on September of 2016 when she believes her tumultuous miscarriage prompted a series of haunting events. The same night she lost her child, Melissa claims a children's toy randomly turned itself on in the middle of the living room and began playing music, and things continued to get stranger from there. On May 31st, Melissa says she received the most conclusive proof yet that her house is being haunted by her unborn baby after she turned on her daughter Leah's baby cam and saw what she believes to be the face of a ghost staring at her 8-month-old. Melissa ran upstairs to pull her daughter away from the pale figure and has been dumbfounded by the footage ever since, she said. The same night the video was taken, I was responding to some of my friends' messages about it when the lamp cord on my bedside started to move. I've heard the same noise once before, Melissa, who's going by a pseudonym, told Caters. Melissa also claims the ghost was making mischief in the kitchen about a week earlier. My husband and I were in the living room when we heard something drop into the empty kitchen sink, she said. It was the lid of our son's sippy cup, and my husband had previously placed it about a foot away from the sink. It made a very loud noise like it had been thrown. Despite her longing to remain in the world of hard science and provable facts, Melissa said she now has just seen too much. I was a skeptic for the longest time, but after witnessing what I have no choice to believe that my house has a ghost, she said. Yeah.
She's certain of it. All right, where are we off to next?
Our last story has to do with aliens, Dave, and they may be rearranging stars to fight dark energy. This according to a study. A study, you say. Congratulations, your species is now has all the elbow room it needs to grow into a universal superpower, according to this story. That's one Russian astronomer's perspective. Anyway, astrophysicist Nikolai Kardashev has first proposed these three phases called level 1, 2, and 3 of galactic expansion, and the three steps are this. 1, harvest all your planet's resources. 2, harvest all of your nearest star's energy. And 3, harvest all the energy from all the stars in your local galaxy, then move on to another galaxy. That's one Russian astronomer's perspective anyway. That's Nikolai Kardashev first proposed these three phases that I just mentioned when he referred to as the three types of technologically advanced civilizations in 1962 as a way to measure the energy consumption of increasingly powerful societies. Recently, a paper posted June 13th to the preprint journal arxiv.org has revived Kardashev's model and added a new apocalyptic twist. In other words, 13 ways to hunt intelligent aliens. According to the author of the paper, Dan Hooper, a senior scientist at the Fermi National Accelerator Laboratory in Illinois and a professor of astronomy and astrophysics at the University of Chicago, harvesting energy from distant stars isn't just the best way to increase a civilization's available resources. It's also the only way to prevent the ever-expanding universe from leaving that civilization totally alone in the vastness of space. The study has yet to be peer-reviewed, however. The presence of dark energy in our universe is causing space to expand at an accelerating rate, Hooper wrote in the new paper. Over the next approximately 100 billion years, the stars beyond our local group or a group of gravitationally bound galaxies that include the Milky Way will fall beyond the cosmic horizon, meaning an observer here could never retrieve information from them over the course of the age of the universe. At that point, the stars not only become only unobservable, but entirely inaccessible, thus limiting how much energy could one day be extracted from them, Hooper went on to write in the paper. In other words, if humans hope to meet aliens in distant galaxies, it'll be a race against dark energy, the mysterious force thought to be uncontrollably stretching our universe farther and farther apart. That, of course, is how we'll find the aliens, according to the paper. Any advanced civilization worth their starships would understand the grim reality of universal expansion, Hooper wrote, and they wouldn't just sit around idly while the universe literally passed them by. Rather, they would capture stars from other galaxies, reel them in, and harvest their energy first before those stars and their energy became inaccessible forever. Given their inevitability of the encroaching horizon, any sufficiently advanced civilization that is determined to maximize its ability to utilize energy will expand throughout the universe, attempting to secure as many stars as possible before they become permanently inaccessible, Hooper wrote. So, how do you lasso a star in the first place? Scientists and science fiction authors alike have pondered this question for decades, and their favored answer is this: throw a giant net around it, of course. This net wouldn't be made of twine or even metal, but out of satellites, a swarm of millions of solar-powered satellites known as Dyson spheres. Oh, I have one of those on my vacuum, Dave.
Yeah, and it's the Dyson bowl that gets into all of the nooks and crannies.
Right. I can catch one of these then. Such a colossal cloud of harvesters could permanently hover around a star, beaming energy back to a nearby planet, or as Hooper proposed in his new paper, actually use that star's energy to accelerate a whole ball of fire back toward the planet that wanted to use it. This may seem like a tall order for humans who are still bumbling around level 1 of Kardashev's scale. Carl Sagan placed us at about a 0.7 in 1973, but some scientists think there could be alien civilizations thousands or even millions of years older than ours who are already well into their level 3 star harvesting phase. And if another civilization has indeed begun rearranging the stars, it may not be long before Earthlings notice them, Hooper wrote. Those stars that are currently en route to the central civilization could be visible as a result of the propulsion that they are currently undergoing, Hooper wrote. Such acceleration would necessarily require large amounts of energy and likely produce significant fluxes of electromagnetic radiation. There you go.
All right. And was that our final story?
That's our final story.
Oh, went by so quickly. All right. It's time to take a break. When we come back, your story's next here on Parashare Supernatural Saturday. This is Beyond the Darkness.
Beyond the Darkness.
Hello, welcome back to the show. This is the best in paranormal talk radio, live on tape from Minnesota, while in Tombstone, Arizona. This is Beyond the Darkness. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. That's Tim Dennis. Was that flow chart a little easier to follow, Tim?
Yeah, that one's easier. Yeah.
All right, good.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, brand new episode, live on tape from Tombstone, Arizona. So make sure you guys check that out. We're going to have a lot of fun on tomorrow's show as well. Let's get to some of the emails that we've got here, Tim.
All right.
Hello, David and Timothy.
Wow.
My name is Clark, and I have a short yet creepy story for you guys. This took place about 10 years ago. At the time, I was working for a company based out of where I lived in Sacramento, California. They had recently moved their operation to a nearby town called Fair Oaks. While not a huge problem of commute, being only a 20-minute drive from where I lived at the time, I fell in love with this quirky little town our company moved to. It had a cool history and a rich culture, so I decided to move to Old Town Fair Oaks, where our shop was located. I moved so close that I just walked to work every day. My God, this is terrifying, Tim. Walking to work every day?
Need to buy a car.
He's walking to work, Tim! What kind of world is it we're walking to work, Tim?
Blisters and calluses, oh my.
Oh my God, walking to work. He knows how to get to the heart of a terrifying story like that, Tim.
I know.
Walking to work.
It's terrible.
A lot of the homes here were built in the 1940s, so the neighborhood was filled with a wealth of history. Being an amateur photographer, I found this place to be a plethora of subjects and discovered an old abandoned house in the middle of this rather expensive place to live. When asking about it to the locals, I could never find any answers as to why this house was abandoned. Even web searches came up with nothing. Curious, I did my own investigation and broke into the place at night. That's not really an investigation. That's a crime.
It's breaking and
pretty
entering.
illegal
Yeah.
and a bad idea. I know. All right, he owns it. Doesn't make it any less illegal. I took many pictures, and when viewing them afterward, found nothing out of the ordinary. but a ghostly image of a man waving goodbye to me through a window I snapped of my final shot while leaving the house. Well, then you did find something out of the ordinary. Unless that ghost is always in the window waving, then that would be ordinary.
Yeah.
At the time, I used cameras that required, what's this word, Tim? Film?
Film. Dave.
Cameras
film.
that used film?
Yeah. It was quite common about 20 years
that you
ago.
had to process at a shop, Tim.
Yeah.
Upon processing the roll from the abandoned house, I found that the last 2 pictures on the roll was the ghostly figure waving goodbye to me, and a picture of me taken from the parking lot, roughly from the same position as my parked car, wearing the same clothes I was currently in, walking out with the bag of pictures I was holding. I never went back to that house. And we had kind of a doppelganger moment, Tim. Doppelgangers.
Remember
Dear Darkness Dave and Tiny Tim.
Remember photomats?
I do.
Yeah.
Those little huts.
Yeah, they're kind of fun. I'm sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
No. Photomats. Good times. Good time. Yeah, they were little huts. I remember one up in Roselle, Illinois.
Yeah.
That job had to suck, right? Because you just sat in that little guardhouse all day.
Yeah.
And you didn't even get to do anything. I mean, it wasn't like you were processing the film there, right?
No. No.
Dear Darkness Dave, that's me. And Tiny Tim, that's you. First off, I want to say I love Darkness Radio, and I'm a subscriber to True Crime Tuesdays. Long story short, a friend and I went into a haunted walk in St. Louis over the weekend with the St. Louis Paranormal Research Society. It was a lot. What was this? It was a Lost Cemeteries of St. Louis walk. Oh, okay. First of all, I have to say I discovered some awesome whiskey this weekend called Red Breast. Delicious, just so smooth. Suddenly we're going into a commercial for whiskey.
Yeah.
That was right before the walk at a corner Irish pub. Anyway, it was fairly uneventful. There were a few places that there were kind of creepy, I guess. Mostly sad when you think about the lost cemeteries, but there's one place called Cherokee Park, and it had a bathroom. Tim, a bathroom.
Oh, my God.
That's been closed down for 10 years.
Oh, you had to hold it.
Oh, my God. That's a lot of time to stand there and hold it.
Yep.
How long does it take to mop that place?
Probably a lot.
Supposedly for around a 2-year. This is poorly written. Please just take the time, folks, to write it and use sentence breaks and those little buttons that look like a spot and ones that look like a spot with a tail, commas and periods. It helps out when I read these kind of, and then just read it out loud to yourself once. And if you can't read it out loud, I probably can't read it out loud. So please just do me that favor. That's all I'm asking. But there's this one place called Cherokee Park, and it had a bathroom that's been closed down for about 10 years from what I've heard, supposedly for around a 2-year. That's exactly how it's written.
Probably.
There were up to 5 people a month committing suicide in the bathrooms. Are we sure it wasn't suicide, or was it that they had eaten someplace that was brutal on them and they went in there to just die?
Probably just exploded from the colon out. Yeah.
After my friend and I finished the tour, we went back and got another drink. Then we went home. Again, fairly uneventful evening until I was woken up in the middle of the night after being pushed out of bed and busting my eye on the corner of my nightstand. Okay, so I had a few whiskeys, but it was still kind of odd. But I had 2 dreams about the damn bathroom that very night. Very, very vivid dreams, including going back to the pub. So, of course, I did the next day, alone, against the advice of my friend who is an impact. I'm sure he meant empath.
Oh,
maybe he is an impact. He could be a bigger fella, and you bump into him, and he impacts you quite often.
Oh, yes.
Woke up this morning with bruises all over my knees. See, that would be the impact.
Yeah.
I bumped into nothing. Not a scary story, of course, but in all honesty, quite exciting anyway. Carry on with all that you do, and I hope you guys come to St. Louis sometime. Well, I don't know that I would tell people that you were hanging out at a bathroom and that you ended up with bruised knees.
Yeah, that could be misconstrued, yeah.
Isn't that kind of what ruined George Michael's career?
Yes, yeah.
Well, that and the fact that he's dead, that's a real career stopper right there, Tim.
Yep, that'll do it.
Dear Dave, it is too soon to go after a prize like George Michael. Please stop taking shots at him. Your friend, Andrew Ridgely.
Wow, Andrew Ridgely listens to the show?
It's very sensitive about this. I understand.
Wow.
I'm not taking shots. I love George Michael. It was one of my favorite singers. I'm not going to lie. I'm a Whamma man.
You're a Whamma man?
A Whamma man.
Huh.
Yeah, and a George Michael maniac, if you will.
George Michael.
Because I got a little faith, Tim.
I bet, yeah.
Hey, Dave and Tim.
Hi.
Now, here's the other end of the spectrum. Tyler writes in this well-written, well-crafted email, but he puts it in about 1-point font, Tim.
Oh, okay.
So it's the smallest writing I think I've ever seen that isn't on the back of a toothpaste label.
So it's finely written.
Wow. Yeah. When I said, please write a fine email, I think he took it to extremes, Tim.
I see. Yeah.
I'm going to try to read this, Tim.
Okay.
I make no promises. It's very, very small. Hey, Dave and Tim, I have a story about my uncle I wanted to share with you that helps back up something you both say quite often.
Okay.
That's the catch-up. I've heard several times in the last 2 years or so of listening to Beyond the Darkness to always look for the most rational reason why something happened. This is one of the many reasons I've enjoyed your show so much, due to you always trying to figure out the logic in a situation, if it is there. However, as you both know, sometimes there are no logical explanations, and I believe in those experiences as well. What I'm going to share with you is a lesson that sometimes the true or logical reason won't always be clear and may not reveal itself until years later, Tim. Now, when this happened to my uncle, he was a divorced dad living in a 2-story house that was quite the older home. Of course, with any older home, you get the occasional creaks and groans. My uncle, also like me and looking for rational reasons for things, just chalked it up to being just that, an old house. He'd also hear the occasional footsteps outside his bedroom door on the 2nd floor. He'd always check to make sure no one was there, but never could explain those. He said that he thought maybe being alone in a bigger house, it was just his mind playing tricks on him. One rare weekend when he didn't have his daughters, he was next door visiting his neighbor on the front porch with some other friends. Where they sat, it left his front door in clear view of his eye line. Now he, as I said, for the most part, lived alone, and to the very best of his knowledge, no one had gone into his home. So imagine his surprise when, after spending a couple of hours visiting, he walked into his house to find every cabinet door and drawer open in the kitchen, Tim. Every cabinet door and drawer.
Jeez.
After doing a walkthrough of the house to make sure that no one else was inside, he quickly went outside and questioned everyone who was still there to see if anyone was having some fun at his expense. My uncle has a pretty good sense of humor, so he wouldn't have been too upset. He would have been more amused than anything. With his friends knowing that, still no one would confess to doing it, and it left him feeling uneasy, Tim.
Mm-hmm.
They all said they'd been right there with him the whole time. How could they have done it? My uncle spent the next 2 nights sleeping in the living room with every light on in the house. He wasn't sure if someone had broken in or was it something else. While he is a rational man, he is also spiritual. Not in the sense of church-going and Bible-thumping, but a believer in something beyond this life and the supernatural. With no rationale explanational, Tim?
Yes.
With no rational explanation, he couldn't help but wonder if something else had been or still was in the home. Nothing else happened for several months and was quickly going on a year. There was still the occasional creak, groan, and unexplained footsteps. At this time, without going into the details, he went from weekend visitations with his daughters to them living with him nearly full time. This led to him thinking of moving a couple of towns over to live in the same school district his daughters had been in for several years, so they wouldn't have to change schools, nor he drive back and forth during the harsh winter months. My cousins, who were visiting with their mother this particular weekend, were gone, and my uncle was next door again visiting with friends, still able to see his front door from the neighbor's porch. When he returned inside the house, every cabinet, door, and drawer in the kitchen was again open. My uncle quickly hurried out of the house, telling his friends about it. Everyone went over to inspect it, and once again were baffled and spooked by what was going on. My uncle decided that day he was selling the house as soon as he could, and he did just that. 10 years has passed since he moved out, and he and some of those same friends from those past days got together for dinner a few weeks ago. He was telling them how he drove by the house recently just out of nostalgia, and the house was on its second set of owners since he sold it. He wondered aloud if they were having the same issues he had had. A lady in the group laughed and said, "You mean you never figured out that was me?" "What?" My uncle asked, confused by her question. The lady confessed it had been her both times, just enjoying messing with him. She said she'd slip from the group, usually pretending to use the bathroom, and go out the back door of the neighbor's house. Then she used her spare key to my uncle's to go in the back door and open the drawers and cabinet doors in the kitchen and then hurry back. My uncle couldn't help but get a tad angry and say, "I slept for 2 nights with all the lights on because of that. I even sold it just to get away from it because I thought it was haunted." Needless to say, even with having a good sense of humor, he didn't find anything funny about this joke. Over Father's Day lunch, my uncle was telling my cousins and my parents about what had happened. I said, "Well, I guess there is some place in knowing the truth behind what was going on." "It does me," one of my cousins said, "Now, if we can just figure out what the footsteps were about." "You heard them too?" My uncle was surprised. "I never said anything to you because I didn't want to frighten you. I absolutely did hear them. And that's why I wanted to change rooms from the second floor to the first floor. One night, the footsteps came to a stop outside my bedroom door, and then I swear it sounded like someone kicked the door trying to break in. I ran out of my room expecting to find someone, but everyone was sound asleep in their own rooms. After I moved to the first floor, I'd hear the footsteps above me, but never outside the room and never kicking my door like that again." My uncle sat quietly for a second before finally saying, "Well, maybe it's best I sold that house after all." While we finally, after all these years, can explain what happened in the kitchen, try as we might, none of us can think of a rational explanation for those footsteps, Tim. Thanks for reading, guys. Keep up the awesome work with your show. And that comes from Cade, Tim. Cade. Of all people, it had to be Cade, Tim.
Yeah. Interesting.
Thanks, Cade.
Yeah.
We're going back deep into the archives, Tim. This email is from Friday, June 22nd. It's not that deep into the archives. No. Some of the other stories I have will be, though. Okay. Dave, I'd like to start by saying how much I respect you and what you do, as well as the level of logic and skepticism you keep while making up your mind about the unknown. So here's a little about me. I'm Tiffany, a 28-year-old artist residing in Reading, Pennsylvania. I've been highly sensitive to just about everything ever since I can remember. My family and friends can all attest to this, and a lot of times refer to me as haunted, no matter where I go. If there is an alteration in my immediate environment, I know it immediately. I see things, feel things. I'm not totally sane because none of us are truly as humans, but I'm definitely not insane or mentally ill in any way that would cause hallucinations or intrusive thoughts. I've not only been having these feelings and experiences all my life, but I've had reoccurring dreams of very distinct places that I've never physically been to. I always wondered where these dreams took place because the events happening in my dreams were of such importance to my entire life. It was just a feeling of certainty that they weren't just simply dreams. It was part of my reality in a sense. After years of researching different paranormal stories and haunted places out of natural curiosity, satisfying the need to feel closer to something you can't really relate with anyone about, when I came across a photo of twisted and bent trees, moss flowing over the dark bark that seemed so meticulously placed there. The backdrop, a misty void that made the nerve endings in my body twitch with electricity just by looking at the picture of it. I knew at that moment I had been there. I smelled the thickness of the humid air filling up my lungs and could taste the sweat that dripped in my mouth after running through this place in my dreams so many times before. It was the Hoia Baisu Forest in Romania, known as the most haunted forest in the world, and known for the most unexplainable, a solid UFO footage captured to date. I did a ton of research and followed the location for years, finding random videos and documentaries surrounding the Hoya Basu on YouTube. A few weeks ago, I watched a documentary done by an English journalist who had a large interest in the paranormal and decided to contact the local organization founder who cares for and respectively defends the forest. Marius Lazin, CEO of the Hoya Basu Project and Hoya Basu Tour Guides, a native to Cluj-Napoca, Romania. Upon watching this film, I did my part in tracking Marius down. Had to be by the grace of something far more powerful than myself that I found him, and messaged his Facebook account along with a request for friendship. My message detailed my story and how I felt indebted to the forest. Marius was over the moon to fill me in that I'm not the only one who has dreamt about the Hoya Basu while having never been even close to Romania. After talking about both of our experiences and really digging into the fact that this is an actual reality, I felt the need to give back not only to the forest, but to those who have had experiences but don't feel like they have a voice or feel validated in any sense because they can't realistically tell someone expecting them to understand. Since I cannot physically be there, I came up with the idea to paint a dream sequence painting series on my recurring visions of the Hoya Basu and donate my art to the Hoya Basu Project. Marius, one of the most well-spoken and insanely sweet people I've ever talked to, shot this idea back at me, not only accepting my offer, but offering me my own spot on their website to promote and encourage others to not feel alone with their experiences. We're hoping it will be the beginning of something positive to promote for the forest that exudes so much beauty, wonder, and mystery. I absolutely adore you and know you're a fan of mystical things, so I'm hoping you will find this message as important as we do. I'd be happy to discuss this more with you if you're interested. Thank you so much. And that comes from Tiffany Ray, Tim. Tiffany Ray. You know, it's interesting, Tiffany. I'm going there to the Hoya Basu forest in just a few months. September. We're nearly sold out. We have 4 spots that remain. If you would like to join us, or anyone out there listening would like to join us as we return to Romania for our final Darkness Radio Romania adventure. Whew, that was kind of hard to say, Tim.
Yeah.
Just go to darknessevents.com. Click on the banner. It'll give you all the information, and you will have the adventure of a lifetime. And the lifetime of adventure begins now at darknessevents.com. Sign up. There's no reason to wait. Haunted forest, haunted castles, on the trail of Dracula, Vlad the Impaler, and more. You can join me, Darkness Radio Dave, as I go along with some of my best friends that I've never met into some of the most haunted places on the planet. So join us now at darknessevents.com.
Yeah, right.
Raspy voice is tiring, Tim.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Hi, Dave and Tim.
Hi.
I have a Parashare story for you that is currently ongoing. My friend Kay, I'm withholding her name, is currently living in Italy with her husband on the naval base. In between moving to their new residence they're staying at on the base hotel, she's been experiencing numerous paranormal occurrences. She is a sensitive, so she picks up on these things easily. She recounted the story to me because she knows my deep interest in the paranormal. Kay told me today that she is seeing dark figures rolling across the ceiling. She sent me a video where you can clearly see 3 figures pass by. Before I was able to be a skeptic, she explained that the blinds were closed and no one had been walking by outside. She also stated that her son had been communicating with a spirit. The spirit told her son that men in uniforms had come and poured slime on his home and that they needed to help him build a new one. Kay found out that the base that she's on is built on what once was an old city. The commissary there has glass flooring where you can see the remains of the old city. She is worried that the dark forces are not good. She hasn't engaged with the entities. She has used oils to help protect her family from the entities. She doesn't have access to sage for cleansing. She's going to try to avoid them due to the fact that she's only there until Friday. I thought maybe you guys would like to hear about this. Thank you for being awesome. And that's from Lindsay. And unfortunately, Tim, that letter was written March 21st of 2017. So we're a little too late to help Kay.
Whoops.
Yeah, sorry about that. We had a thing. And sometimes we get a lot of emails, and sometimes we don't. And in this case, we had a lot of emails, Tim. A lot of emails.
Yeah, that'll happen. Yeah.
Hi, Dave and Tim. This letter is from Monday, March 20th, 2017, Tim. It's time travel time. I wanted to say that I love your show. Been following you since Darkness Radio. Glad to see you have a new home on Podcast One with Beyond the Darkness. My story is as follows. I grew up living right across the street from my grandparents and great aunt. We lived in a normal neighborhood in North Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It was a rough neighborhood, the ghetto, if you will, but normal nonetheless. I know the last thing you think of when you think Wisconsin is the ghetto or the hood, but trust me, it was rough. They used to call Milwaukee Baby Chicago. Yeah, that doesn't sound very hood.
No.
You live it, man, up in Baby Chicago. Damn, son. Apparently, the house my grandparents lived in had a ghost. It was very well known to my aunts and uncles and cousins. In fact, we say he's our family ghost, and his name is Jake, Tim. And no, he doesn't work for State Farm.
No?
I don't know where he came from or any history about a Jake in that neighborhood or house, though I've never done any research. Well, maybe if you did, you'd find out who Jake was. Go to diedinhouse.com and get your report now. I make no money from telling you that, but I am interested to see what you find out a year and 3 months after you wrote this email.
Yes.
Cousins who have spent the night, my dad and uncles have told stories of having seen Jake. No one had ever told of anything malevolent happening. They've just seen an apparition, sometimes sitting there. When I was about 11 or so, before I had even heard about Jake, I, along with two of my cousins and my brother, all saw Jake at the same time, Tim. It was a nice summer day, late afternoon, and we were playing outside. My grandparents were sitting outside along with my two older cousins, my brother and my uncle. After playing for a while, we all went inside to get a drink of water. Me and my two cousins and my little brother. It must have been the beginning to get dark outside, because the inside of the house, while not pitch black, was very dimly lit. Everyone was outside, and my grandparents often kept most of the curtains and shades closed, no matter what time of day it was. All the lights in the house were off. This wasn't unusual or anything, and wasn't creepy. I'm just giving you an idea of how it all looked. We walked through the dim house to the kitchen, turned on the light over the kitchen sink to see a little better. Eager to get back outside, me and my cousins quickly drank and began to walk through the house, leaving my little brother behind, as he was a little slower than us. You understand that as an older brother. I couldn't be bothered to help my little brother get some water. I had important games waiting for me outside. We left the kitchen, walking through the dining room, and most of the way through the living room to the front door. At the last moment, we decided to turn around to call to my little brother to hurry up and get outside. When we turned around, there it was, in the dining room, bending over, looking like it was picking up something from a chair, was an apparition. It wasn't quite full-bodied, but you could make out a head, arms, and a torso. It was a light gray silhouette against the dimness of the house. It was looking at us, like watching us during mid-pickup. It felt like time slowed down. I looked over at my cousin. His mouth was hanging open and his eyes were wide, staring at the ghost. My brother started to back through the house towards us. Since he is still with us today, I think it's safe to say he made it out okay. But at the time, I realized that my cousins had turned and were running for the front door. I followed suit, and we all burst out of the door at the same time, startling my grandparents and older cousin. A moment later, my little brother came running out of the house. My two cousins got in trouble by their older brother for apparently running through the house and busting through the door. But nothing happened to me, Tim. Nothing happened to me. A few minutes later, from outside, we saw the living room lamp on. My uncle came outside. We asked him if he was in the dining room when we were coming out. He said he wasn't. We didn't know if it was him just messing with us or not. My cousins and brother and I debated amongst ourselves whether or not it could have been our uncle messing with us. He couldn't figure out where he would have come from to be seen where we saw the ghost, or where he would have went to avoid being run into by my little brother. Also, while we could see my brother clearly, the ghost was in between us, and like I described earlier, was a light gray silhouette with no legs. That was when I was 11 or so. I'm now 34 and live in Minneapolis, Tim. My brother, 7 at the time, said that he saw the ghost too. but from the other side. However, in recent years, he's saying he didn't see anything. He's not saying, yeah, it was our uncle, but he's now saying that he didn't see anything at all. However, to this day, when I mentioned to my cousins, hey, remember when we saw the ghost at Grandma's house? They all do. As I stated earlier, since then I've heard more stories from family about times they've seen Jake. Again, nothing malevolent had ever been reported, and I've never experienced or seen anything since at my grandmother's house. I do have a bit of a fun with it today, where when something strange happens in my house, I tell my wife, that's just Jake. She always glares at me, to which I always reply with the fact that I don't think Jake would follow me to Minneapolis. I'm positive he's still in my grandmother's house. Are you sure? Are you comfortable with that thought? Thanks for reading my story, and keep up the good work. I meet you and Tim at the first paranormal art show a few years ago. I think my family may have been the only black family there, at least while I was there. I had a newborn son with me, and while you were walking around judging the artwork, you put the first place medal up to him and said he was the winner. That was very nice. Again, keep up the good work. Best wishes, Markel McGee. P.S. I missed the button bar and things like Terminator 2 theme during the reading of tech stories during Supernatural News. I don't know about the radio business, but is there a legal reason why you don't use a button bar sound effects anymore? I'm just curious. Thanks again. That comes from Markel. Can you explain that to him, Tim?
I don't have a button bar here.
Yeah.
I do remember Markel, and I can tell Markel this. They do call Minneapolis Baby Montreal. I'm just saying. Yeah. So
where are you from? Baby Montreal.
Baby Montreal. Damn. So just remember that. Yeah. You're in Baby Montreal now. So.
All right, Timothy.
Yes.
We're coming into the end. We just have a handful of stories left.
All right.
Are you ready?
Ready.
Shall we continue?
Yes.
Dear Dave and Tim, there was a curse put on our family in the early 1900s. There was a disagreement between my family and another lady. It turns out she was a witch. She put a curse on my great-great-great-grandmother. The curse was that she would have a daughter as her first child, and that my great-great-great-grandmother would die at 89 or 69. That's a very specific curse.
Yeah.
I curse you to have one daughter and then to die by the age of 69. Because I love that number. Then my great-great-grandmother would have a daughter as her first child, and that my great-great-grandmother would die at 59. Well, this must be like an OCD witch, right? Then my great-grandmother would have a daughter as her first child, and my great-grandmother would die, yeah, you guessed it, Tim, at 49. All of this happened. When my grandmother had a daughter as her first child, she became so very worried that the curse would continue. When she turned 39, which according to the curse she would die, she became deathly sick and she was hospitalized. She was the mother to 7 kids ranging from 3 to 16. She knew she couldn't leave them without a mother. She was praying to God to please make her better, and after several days, she got to go home. As she was standing in her kitchen with several of her children around her, she was once again praying to God to break this curse. As she was doing this, a large black mass came out of her and floated out the door. After this, she began to feel better. Several years later, when Grandma's eldest daughter became pregnant, they were anxious to see if she would have a girl. But she didn't. Apparently, the curse has been broken. Well, until you've had a couple of boys and realize what a pain in the ass they are. My grandmother was the strongest woman I have ever met, so strong, in fact, that she broke a curse that had been on the family for years. I lost my grandmother in August of 2015. She was 84 and died from natural causes. She still is and always will have a strong presence in my life. Thank you for reading this. I love your show, and that comes from Logan Hill in Ojai, Tim.
Oh.
Very cool. Grandma's a powerful woman.
Yeah.
Dave and Tim, our upbringing was rough, but compared to what is happening to families today, it was just weathering the storm and finding my place in the family dynamics. My mother was a control queen. Being the oldest child during the Depression made her who she was. If you weren't with her, you were going to be on the wrong side of the stick. My father was the youngest child who was raised in a family that wasn't really touched too deeply by the Depression. His sister was 8 years older than him, so they were not very close. My dad was very wild in his day, drinking, him and his buddies out running the cops, etc. He and my mother didn't marry until they were both 27, which placed them far past the normal age of that time. This was at the time that the USA was joining the war, World War II effort, and he just joined, and they were married because he was leaving in less than 30 days. He was in for the duration of the war. North Africa, Italy, and Germany. They didn't have much counseling for everything these guys had seen and been through over there. So it was rough at home. The first 3 children were born, and I came along 9 years after my closest sibling. I was born in 1958. From what my siblings said, my time with them was a piece of cake compared to what happened earlier. I am telling you all of this for a reason, so please bear with me. It was as if it was my mom and the older 3 against Dad and I. Just the way it shook out, I guess. Drinking, fights, cops yelling, but through it all, I was my dad's sidekick. He finally quit drinking, and when I was a senior in high school in 1976, fast forward to 1990, my mom calls and says that Dad was going in for a test and a biopsy. I went with him. Doctor came out an unoperational lung cancer was the diagnosis. Mom let it slip that he had a chest x-ray done 5 years earlier, and at that time didn't want to do anything for it. That was in May of 1990. My father passed the first part of August that year. I was inconsolable, awful pain and mourning. But over the years, I had other dead relatives and people I knew visit me in my dreams. I held out hope. I had married in 1994. It was great for myself and the kids. My husband died in August of 2001. The only other man who I felt cared for me and loved me was gone. His name was Charles. That smartass started showing up less than a week after his death. After the initial shock of how he presented himself to me the first time, it was fine. He stayed with me for about 10 years. Fast forward to 2003, I was staying at a friend's house and was in a dead sleep. All of a sudden, there I was walking into this old diner I had worked at about 20 years before. There was my dad, but he looked like he did when he was about 45 to 50, sitting at the counter smoking a cigarette. I was overwhelmed with joy. I sat down with him and asked, "Dad, where have you been? I missed you so much. I was so worried about you. Are you okay?" He gave me that half-assed grin and just said, "Honey, I had to work through a few things before I could come back and see you." I told him how much I had missed him and that I loved him. He replied he loved me too. Then the dream was over and I woke up crying with relief, knowing he was all right. He also stayed close for years. The story still brings tears to my eyes. I don't get to see him hardly at all anymore. I know that he's okay and I will see him again. Thank you for letting me share my story and vent. Thank you very much. Have a great day. And that comes from Bobby. Thank you, Bobby. It's a beautiful little story to share.
Mm-hmm.
Our final story is here, Tim. Our final story.
Final story.
Hey, Dave and Tim.
Hi.
My name is Kyle. I've been a listener to Beyond the Darkness since it first begun because I'm a huge Talk is Jericho fan and heard you first on his show. Anyway, to get straight to the point, I wanted to tell you about the possible dogman sighting myself and a few friends experienced one night in Kenosha, Wisconsin, about 5 to 6 years ago. I actually didn't really have a clear understanding of what we had saw that night until all these years later when I heard the episode of Beyond the Darkness with Dark Waters, where he told a couple of stories about the dogmen. And I couldn't help but realize a lot of similarities with the creature me and my 3 buddies saw driving around the city of Kenosha one spring night. And I haven't really ever discussed with anyone else other than my 2 buds because one refuses to believe what he saw because it's the type of thing that make people around here think you're on some crazy drugs. But it was definitely real, whatever it was. Thank you for letting me share. You guys have an awesome show, and that comes from Kyle O. Tim. Kyle O.
Crazy drugs, you say?
Yeah. I lied. I have one more story, Tim.
Okay.
It's a bit of a long one. Shall I try to knock it out here?
Sure.
Our final story is here, folks. And remember, we are out in Tombstone, Arizona this weekend. If you'd like to come on out and see us Sunday, we will be hanging around. We'd love for you guys to come on out and visit with us. And I will be out at Wizard World, Boise, Idaho, Tim. There's going to be a lot of great celebrities on hand. Ron Perlman is going to be there from Sons of Anarchy and Hellboy. William Shatner is going to be there from Every Show Ever Made. Jewel State, oh, God, she's beautiful, from Serenity and Firefly. She's going to be on hand. They've got James Marsden from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Charisma Carpenter is going to be there. Many other Star Trek members from different casts will be on hand, and you can come out there and save 20%. All you have to do is go to wizardworld.com and then use Darkness20 at checkout. That's wizardworld.com darkness20 at checkout in order to get 20% off the cost of your tickets for the event in Boise, Idaho. Or if you want to use that same discount code for any of the upcoming Wizard World events, feel free to do that, even if I won't be in attendance. I'm going to hit about 4 or 5 of them this year, but if you'd like to attend, come on out and see me in Boise, Idaho. That's July 13th, 14th, and 15th. 13th, 14th, and 15th. Spending Friday the 13th with me, Tim, Darkness Radio Dave. It's a dream come true for me.
It really
is. I get to spend that whole day with me.
Yeah.
Our final story, Tim.
Okay.
Mary, the drunk lady. My memory has a tendency of failing me when it comes to the many areas of my childhood. Nevertheless, at the youthful age of 50, I still remember growing up in a big village of Beachville, Ontario, as clearly as I remember yesterday. I may not commit to memory the faces or the names of my neighbors, friends, teachers, and schoolmates, but I do remember the corner lot house I lived in until the age of 10 quite vividly. I can call to mind a number of ghostly encounters in and around this home. It's quite literally the scariest place I've ever lived to date. My grandmother's house taking a close second. One encounter that had always stuck out in my mind took place while outside of a beautiful summer day. Furthermore, it involves a particular young woman dubbed by many people in the village as Mary the Drunk Lady. And, well, I suppose she wore that name rather well at the time. It was the only name my siblings and I knew her by, and we were by no means fearful of using the term in the company of our peers. Heck, most of them called her Mary the Drunk Lady, too. To my recollection, Mary the Drunk Lady had never been a visitor in our home. She was, on the other hand, very good friends with a close neighbor of ours named Dinty Moore. My parents claimed that he was, in point of fact, the first person in Beachville, or perhaps in Oxford County, to own a vehicle. When I was a child, Dinty Moore had owned no vehicle. He lived alone in a beat-up old trailer home that was awkwardly situated on a small plot of land across the road from our house. He was, in true essence, a dirty old stinky tobacco-chewing kind of man who had the likes of an old village bum. Every now and again, I would stop and chat with him if I happened to spy him on his dirty old lawn chair, ceaselessly spitting out his dirty old chewing tobacco. With the exception of Mary the Drunk Lady and my parents, he seldom had any other visitors and was rarely seen venturing further than his own front yard. Mary the Drunk Lady would frequently visit with Dinty Moore during the summer seasons. I, on the other hand, attempted to stay as far away as possible during these visits. My siblings and I habitually feared, disliked, and were, for the most part, disgusted by her and all of her ugliness. That was just the way it had always been. She was a very loud, mean, filthy, dirty drunk who had done nothing but frighten me as a child. Believe it or not, she had blatantly telephoned the police on my 6-year-old brother for supposedly stealing a dime from her. The police had come. The police had quietly left. In the end, this unpleasant event had done nothing but heighten my fear of her. Unbeknownst to me at the time, my final encounter with Mary the Drunk Lady would lead me down a path to seeing people differently. It happened on a gorgeous summer day in the year of 1971. I was 8 years old, and my sister Denise had just turned 7. We were sitting outside playing with some toys on the concrete cistern in our yard. It was in close proximity to the right-hand side of our house and perfectly positioned beneath a huge, shady maple tree. While we played, I glanced up towards the railroad tracks into my grandmother's house beyond the umpteenth time in my short life. The railroad tracks were on a bit of an incline and ran parallel to the narrow dirt road at the right side of our house. My grandmother's house was located directly on the other side of those tracks. They were extremely close. So close, in fact, they crossed over my grandmother's short driveway. I did not want and was not expecting to see much when I glanced up, because we were the only two houses to be found on this little piece of deserted road. What's more, zilch happened on those railroad tracks unless my siblings and I were the ones making it happen. A short time later, I glanced at my grandmother's house with varying disinterest and was startled to see a young woman standing in the middle of the railroad tracks looking at me and my sister in our play. She was dressed in an expensive long-sleeved white formal dress that flowed down to just above her costly white shoes. Her hair was lengthy and brown in color. It was put up in such a way that I was positive in the moment that only the finest hairdresser in some distant town had created the style. She was quite beautiful and displaying a smile that was both warm and inviting. I must confess I was a little taken aback to see her standing up there the way she was. I looked up and down the railroad tracks but saw no one following behind or ahead of her. She was alone, and that was somewhat bothering to me. I could not for the life of me figure out why this beautiful young woman was standing up there on those dirty railroad tracks with not another soul in sight. My grandmother was not at home, so I knew she was no visitor of hers. It was puzzling sight indeed, and I can remember thinking that possibly she had just walked over from the church around the corner. I considered this notion for a small number of seconds before realizing this wasn't a Sunday. Honestly, I was absolutely dumbfounded as to who she was and where she had come from. My curiosity grew the longer she stood there, smiling down at me. I glanced over to my sister, who was peering down, engrossed in what she was doing. Casually, I said, "Hey, look, there's a lady standing up there on the tracks looking at us." When my sister looked up, the woman cheerfully called out, "Hi, girls. How are you two doing today?" I immediately bolted up from where I was sitting, feeling flabbergasted and shocked, surprised all at the same time. I knew who that voice belonged to, but the woman in the front of me seemed to be somebody else entirely. In all the excitement, I think I might have blurted out "fine" or something, while my sister just sat there and said nothing. As usual, she rarely said a word to anyone and was currently looking at me for direction. I whispered down towards her, "That's Mary, the drunk lady." I didn't wait for a response. In fact, I really wasn't looking for one. For whilst these words alone were tumbling out of my mouth in what seemed to be the slowest of motion, my only real thought was to hightail it back into the house and have a talk with my mother about the situation at hand. It was all wrong. Her being on those tracks, the way she was, and something needed to be done about that. I was convinced my mother would follow me outside to confront Mary the drunk lady as to why she was on those train tracks, because I certainly couldn't find the voice to do it myself. Hurriedly, I continued on. I'm going in to tell Mom. As I turned to go, I peered up one final time to that stunning young woman who, for some strange reason, was disguising her voice to be that of Mary the drunk lady. I took that final moment to truly look beyond all her fancy attire and fully focus on the woman hiding beneath it. As I fixed my gaze upon her face, I could unmistakably see there would be no further doubts in my mind. It was Mary the drunk lady standing up there. With that confirmation planted firmly in my brain, I completed my turn and headed towards the front door with my sister silently in tow. I heard Mary calling out behind me, "Goodbye, girls. It was nice seeing you." But I couldn't even bring myself to turn around or offer her a polite reply in return. I merely began to walk a little faster, with my silent sister walking a little faster behind me. My mother was right inside the door when we entered. Without hesitating, I said, "Mom, Mary the drunk lady is up on the tracks, all dressed up like she was just in a wedding or something. You need to come outside right now and ask her why she's all standing up there and doing nothing but staring at us and being nice and all." My mother had persistently replied back with, "Believe me, it's definitely not Mary the drunk lady." The more I strived to tell her it was, I knew in my heart of hearts, and was absolutely positive beyond doubt, that it was her up there. I had my confirmation by golly, and nothing could change that. Hastily, I gave up trying to convince my mother of what I knew to be the obvious truth. I demanded she come outside and tell me who was standing there on those train tracks if it was not Mary the drunk lady. This business between my mother and I took forever, or so it seemed to me. In reality, it happened in under a minute, and then the three of us were out the door to investigate. As luck would have it, Mary the drunk lady was nowhere to be seen. Not seeing her up there on those railroad tracks was an enormous disappointment, and my mother only had one thing to say before returning to the house. "Doesn't matter. It wasn't Mary the drunk lady anyway. But that's final." I was livid, to say the least. I stormed into the house behind her, preparing to question her knowledge. In my 8-year-old domineering voice, I said, "Mom, why are you so sure it wasn't Mary the drunk lady if you didn't even see her? I know it was her. I swear it was her. I'm not lying, really. I heard her. I know her voice, and I know what she looks like." On and on I went, wearing down my mother's thin patience. Ultimately, she said something I've never forgotten. "Shelley, I know it wasn't Mary the drunk lady because she died a few days ago in a fire." Of course, my immediate reaction to this information was one of pure disbelief. I told my mother to quit joking around because I had just seen her outside on the tracks with my own 2 eyes. But this was no joke. And according to my mother, Mary the drunk lady had not only perished in that fire, she had also been the cause of it. In short, she inadvertently started a general store on fire with a lit cigarette. Gradually, the Mary on the railroad tracks became all but forgotten as I took in this terrible news. To my surprise, I actually felt a genuine sorrow towards this woman whom I'd never liked. being witness to a whole other side in our Mary the Drunk Lady had changed things, because for a brief moment in time, I had the distinct pleasure of catching a glimpse at the real Mary under the Mary the Drunk Lady, and I liked her. I never gave the railroad track incident or Mary the Drunk Lady much thought after that day. She was just another ghost in a small line of ghosts previously encountered. I never questioned it. It was what it was. A few years later, our family gratefully moved to Woodstock, Ontario, leaving behind the phantoms and apparitions of my early childhood. Shortly thereafter, I steadily began to realize that seeing Mary on the railroad tracks was teaching me a little something about something in my little hometown. You see, for the first time in my life, I was encountering individuals on the streets and on the buses that were just like Mary or worse. Whenever I spotted a Mary the Drunk Lady, I would involuntarily think of her tragic demise, and my heart would break a little inside. Without ever really knowing it, and at the tender age of 10, I was beginning to comprehend a wise proverb. Don't judge a man until you've walked a mile in his shoes. On the whole, I started to feel empathy and a real concern for these people instead of constructing jokes at their expense of their misfortunes. Mary was helping me to see the good under the bad in these creepy new characters. In effect, I think she showed herself to me in the hope I would recognize that a genuinely kind, lovable human being was living underneath all that nastiness. I sensed she wanted me to know that life had somehow dealt her a wrong hand, and that perhaps in her own way she was remorseful for being that terrifying individual she portrayed herself to be. I suppose Mary the Drunk Lady sent me to an unspoken message that day, a message that said, hey, take a look at me. I'm not such a bad person after all. I fell onto my share of hard times, but I'm all better now. You know, I have no doubt that she is. Rest in peace, Mary. Rest in peace. And with that, we bid you a fond adieu until the morrow. When we return, I'm Dave Schrader, that's Tim Dennison. This is Beyond the Darkness.